It's okay for women not to be attracted to a gender recognition certificate. But we should also be thinking about punishment as well. We should also be thinking about litigation, because these people, this ideology, this madness has absolutely devastated our education, it's devastated our institutions, it's devastated our society, actually.
All those manuals need to be rewritten now, all those policies change, the guidance change, and my God, there needs to be a day of reckoning with Stonewall.
It's just so sterile, it's so, people used to enjoy their work, whereas now there's something has changed about the workplace, I think. Hello and welcome to Newspeak, the New Cultural Forum's look at the weekly news. I'm Amy Gallagher. I'm filling in for Peter Whittle while he's away on a well-earned holiday. And I'm joined by our usual commentators, Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, Royal Historian and Senior Fellow of the New Cultural Forum, and Philip Kiszely, Cultural Historian and Senior Fellow of the New Cultural Forum. Just before we start, I'm very excited, Philip, about our up-and-coming literary festival, which tickets are selling out fast, aren't they?
They are the proverbial hotcakes. Tickets went on sale on Monday and they are just flying out. So if you are interested in coming to the festival, please do get tickets as soon as possible. This is on the 23rd and 24th of May, and we have some incredible names. We've got Alison Pearson, we've got Lionel Shriver, we've got Matthew Goodwin, we've got Andrew Doyle, we've got Gareth Roberts, lots and lots of other people as well. It's going to be a fantastic couple of days. The overall theme is going to be censorship and exclusion, because we are talking essentially about literature from the right, or right-leaning conservative literature. And of course there is little or no room for that kind of thing in the sector. So it should be really interesting, and I'm just fascinated to see all of these amazing commentators, authors, academics together in one space and to hear what they're going to say. Yeah,
I'm particularly looking forward to seeing Lionel Shriver. I've never seen her before, but she's like a personal hero. So I will be there. Rafe, you're going to be there, aren't you?
I'll be there too.
Well, the whole team will be there, actually. Yeah.
Tickets are available on our website or via our website.
Yeah. And we've got some local events coming up as well, Philip.
We've got lots of activity happening in the local sphere. We've got tonight, actually this afternoon, in Carlisle, how civil wars start and how to stop them. That's at 2:00. So if you're in Carlisle, you'll need to get to that pretty quick. On the 22nd, we've got the local monthly meetup in Dorset. And 24th, we've got a meetup in Lincoln, and I'll be there. I'm going to be at quite a few of these, actually, because I'm going around the country. Beaconsfield on the 24th as well, with Charlie Downs. Birmingham informal meetup on the 27th. Southampton meetup on the 29th. And on the 29th as well, a Newcastle event, and I'll be there speaking to the locals of the Newcastle group. So if you're in Newcastle, please do come along to that. We've got a launch of our new group, the Cambridge group, on the 30th of April. So if you're in and around Cambridge and you're interested in coming down to the event, do get in touch with us. We'd be really pleased to see you there. That's our first new event since I've been in charge. Into May, we've got Southend-on-Sea. With Mark Beachill. That's on the 1st of May. On the 13th of May, we've got a Salisbury locals meetup. And on the 20th of May, we've got another meetup in Newcastle. And on the 20th of May as well, we've got Canterbury. There's a meetup there. So there's tons and tons and tons of stuff going on. Please do get involved. Please do get in touch with us if you're interested in joining locals. It's locals@newcultureforum.org.uk. Get in touch with us there. And of course, all these events are free.
Excellent. Thank you, Philip. So we're starting the show with some good news, actually. This was Wednesday of this week. We were all waiting on the edge of our seats to get the High Court ruling, Supreme Court ruling, actually, around what a woman is. That was the question that was put to the Supreme Court. Philip, this was about... It was about what the word woman means, wasn't it? It was about whether under the Equality Act, that the category of sex, whether that is biological sex or whether it could also include what's known as legal sex, which is a man who says he is a woman and has a certificate to say he is a woman. And actually the Supreme Court said that no, a man, regardless of whatever certification he has, is not a woman. So this is a massive blow, isn't it, to transgender ideology?
It's extraordinary, isn't it, that after all this time since the trans madness flared up, I don't know however long ago it was, 6 or 7 years ago, and went into complete overdrive where everybody was locked down, that we need the Supreme Court to tell us that fellas aren't women.
Yeah.
And we need the Supreme Court to say that it's okay for women not to be attracted to a gender recognition certificate, which is what this was about. It is really good news. It's fantastic news. It's common sense. If you go back to the Gender Recognition Act, the Equalities Act, that you were talking about, there's no way on earth that the people who drafted that legislation would have thought for 1 minute that they didn't mean biological sex and they didn't mean biological women. But it's only, 15 years ago? It isn't a long time ago. So for me, that's the really worrying thing. The takeaway from this is how things have changed so massively in such a short time. The fallout of this stuff, it isn't just about women's spaces. It isn't just about women's sports. It isn't just about freedom of association. It isn't just about lesbians being able to be lesbians without men being in the room. It's about what's happened in the broader scheme of things as well. So I'm thinking particularly about education here. And I'm thinking about how identity politics and gender identity politics has indoctrinated our children over the last 10 years or so. We're riding high at the moment. We should be pleased because this is a real victory. It's a victory for women. It's a victory for children. But we should also be thinking about punishment as well. We should also be thinking about litigation because these people, this ideology, this madness has absolutely devastated our education. It's devastated our institutions. It's devastated our society, actually. We can't just let these people just quietly remove their pronouns from their emails. We can't just let them say, as lots of politicians are saying today, recording this on a Thursday, oh, well, I was anti-gender anyway. And then they're being, people are saying, oh, well, no, you weren't actually because you were saying this and you were attacking women in the name of gender ideology. We can't just let them do that. We can't just let this quietly go away. This is one of these things. If we are mounting a fight back, a kind of Trump-style fight back, then we need to think now about punishment. We need to think about prosecution because these people have not only wrecked the culture, they've wrecked society, they've wrecked lives. We were talking not long ago about puberty blockers given to 12 and 13-year-olds. You know all about that. It's absolutely insane that we even got there. So there's something really, really important about that. And just to finish, I wrote a chapter on this a couple of years ago for our book, State of Emergency. I interviewed some people. I always remember I interviewed a grandmother, and her 6-year-old granddaughter was going to bed worried that she would change into a boy in the middle of the night, but also worried that her little toy rabbit, who she slept with, would change into a boy in the middle of the night as well. That's real negative impact on vulnerable children. So we do have to think about it, and we have to think what we will do about it.
Hello, please excuse this brief interruption, but I'd be really grateful if you could please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel. Our mission is vitally important, and we must grow this channel to ensure that our content reaches the biggest possible audience. The best way to do this is for you to subscribe. It's totally free. And in addition to subscribing, if you're able to donate or join our membership scheme, please click on the link in the description or visit our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. We've got great plans ahead, but we can't do it without your support. From only £4 per month, you'll receive a range of perks and benefits, including exclusive content. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you, the accountability issue. So much of this has to do with activism and of changing the language, because the Equality Act was clear that there was the category of transgender and the category of sex. And we all understood what those two things meant. And then what's happened is gender and sex got conflated. And it's Stonewall, it's Mermaids, it's all the activists that were pumping all of this literature out that so many organisations, borrowed from, and then suddenly this language totally changed. And now, if you've changed your gender, you have changed your sex, and that's where all the confusion was. But Rafe, we are now going back to the original intention of the Equality Act. What do you make of all of this? Do you think it's a big win, or are you a bit more, it's just kind of bit more pessimistic?
It's a huge win.
Yeah.
I mean, what's remarkable is that, we've been, the entire nation, the entire Western world has been on a white-knuckle dystopian roller coaster for, as Philip was saying, 6 or 7 years. This sort of ruling I would have liked to have seen 5 years ago. Why has it taken so long for everyone to say, actually, the emperor has no clothes? Because that's precisely what we're talking about.
And his set skills are on shelves.
And we can clearly see that he's actually not a man. And yes, and the accountability is right. I mean, just think now what's going on in HR departments across the public sector, in the corporate world. All those manuals need to be rewritten now. All those policies change, the guidance change. And my God, there needs to be a day of reckoning with Stonewall and with Mermaids and all those who were desperately cleaving to get one of their badges to put on their website to say we are a Stonewall champion. Well, I'm sorry. As Philip was saying, we've had recently the postmaster scandal, all these sorts of scandals. Just think about all those people whose lives have been ruined, and they've been vindicated today for actually simply applying common sense and abiding by the law. And I think millions are going to come out of this in terms of compensation, in terms of court settlements or out-of-court settlements. But it goes even broader than that, because with one fell swoop, the Supreme Court has stated that that gender is binary, that there are only the male and sex. So suddenly, places like the NHS that say, oh, there are 101 genders, I'm sorry, no, they're not. That's all struck out. All of this nonsense about someone saying that they are gender fluid, that's completely gone as well. And the huge insult to say, actually, you're not a woman, you're a cis woman, as we've seen so many people say now, actually, no, you're a cis woman. No, you are a woman. That's been struck out. So this is on many levels a great day to be proud, to be British. Very rarely can you hear that these days. But there's something else as well, actually, and I think this actually opens up another opportunity, because Philip mentioned that the judges said specifically that single-sex spaces must be preserved, and they mentioned lesbian spaces, for example. Well, that broadens it out, and I say, right, now that you've got this, actually men's spaces should also actually now be preserved.
It's a really good point. And freedom of association.
Yeah. And we've seen women need to vacate male spaces if their spaces are now also sacrosanct. We've seen, boys can't join the Girl Guides, they can't join the Brownies, but girls can join the Cub Scouts, girls can join the Boy Scouts. We've seen our ancient all-male choirs. Women have been forced upon them after 900 years. St. Paul's Cathedral now losing that unique sound you get from an all-boys choir. One of the finest sounds that ever lived was the English choral music tradition. And then private members' clubs. We've seen all of these terribly vicious, nasty campaigns and underhand tactics by The Guardian and other people to get places like the Garrick to allow female members, whilst they've said nothing about the fact that you have other female-only clubs like the University Women's Clubs. I mean, the hypocrisy is absolutely staggering, and we must restore and preserve male-only spaces as well.
I mean, it's just collapsed under the weight of its own stupidity, right? But this is just the same thing. It's another iteration of exactly the same thing that probably started with, it's the activist thing, right? So it probably started with Me Too. Then it went to BLM. Then everybody was closed down and lots of lonely men were watching sissy porn for a year and then decided that they were trans. Okay. Then you've got Green. And then, for God's sake, you've got Hamas. All of this stuff, it's all the same thing. It's all of this kind of Marxist activism that is it's essentially set to destabilize the country. So we knock this out, we knock this pin out. We really need to go for the other stuff as well. So I think this is why we really need to be aggressive with this, because this doesn't stand on its own. All of this stuff is together, and it's just the shame that we've had to endure it for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you were saying, Rafe, because this is being hailed as a kind of women's rights win. Actually, it's a win for just reality, because it's saying that there is this thing called sex, and obviously that includes men as well. And this issue is sort of, the focus has been on the encroachment into women's spaces, women's sports, and there's specific kind of safety and risk issues around that. But you're right, men's spaces, are there even men's working clubs anymore? I don't know, not many. And the Scouts, I mean, to me, that's more cultural, isn't it? Because is there anyone sticking up for the Scouts? Is there anyone saying we will not let girls in, but girls are trying to get in? To me, it seems as though that's been given up. So how do you convince, I guess, how do you get the culture to change where men and boys feel that they can say we want our spaces? Because actually sometimes it is the feminists who will go on and about women's spaces that will then they will turn on places like the Garrett Club and say there shouldn't be boys' clubs, which to me seems a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah, well, classic example being Charlotte Proudman, this viciously vindictive lawyer who went after the Garrick and others. Now she's a strident feminist. This is probably the same sort of woman who was. I'm not sure what her position is on trans, but certainly there are many of the TERF brigade who have been campaigning on this issue who are also opposed to male-only spaces. I mean, it is sheer hypocrisy. There's no other way to look at it. And it does, of course, pose questions as to now what's going to happen to trans people in terms of where they go as well now, because almost, they're going to have to go, if you're a trans woman, you're going to have to go to male wards in hospitals now. And so there are so many issues here that are arising from this legislation. It's only a matter of days or hours. It's going to be very interesting to see how this actually does unfold, and how, of course, the public services in particular are going to try to deal with this.
I think one of the things is as well, we can get back to a sense of sanity around this very important word, which is safeguarding, which had just gone completely out of the window. We completely forgot safeguarding because it was all about advocacy, wasn't it? It was all about affirmation. And when you're only focusing on affirming a particular kind of person, but you're not even doing that, actually, you're just pushing a particular kind of ideology, then two kinds of people always suffer. It's women and children, okay? They do suffer, and they always will do, when they are at the mercy of ideology and sexual fetish as well. So hopefully things will begin to change now, but legislation is one thing. The people in the institutions, the people on the ground, the true believers are another. So the institutions really need to be monitored. They need to be policed. They need to be pushed. And this really does need to go forward.
Yeah, and I think one thing that has brought about this ruling is that we've had, 10 years or so of, legal cases and case law. We had the Mayor for Starter case where it was determined that gender critical views are worthy of respect in a democratic society. We've had so much pushback on this issue that it seemed as though it would be unconscionable for the judge to rule otherwise, perhaps, which is good. So it does show you that the pushback does do something. And someone that's an organisation that's really been at the heart of that is the Free Speech Union. They've represented so many gender critical feminists. I think that's the bulk of their work, actually, that they do. And Lord Toby Young is now also pushing back on more infringements to free speech with this new bill, Rafe, that Angela Rayner wants to bring in, employment rights bill, which could see pub landlords being held responsible for what the customers say.
Whilst we've had a moment of brightness shine upon us with the Supreme Court, it doesn't mean that that it's still blue skies. Unfortunately, we still have some very dystopian, very undemocratic and very chilling legislation heading our way in terms of, for example, the Employment Rights Bill, which amongst several perfectly normal protections for employees includes their right to be free from third-party harassment. What this means is that it is now, for example, in a restaurant or in a pub, it is the employer who has a duty to stop workers feeling harassed by third parties, be they contractors, be they members of the public, be they paying guests or whatever. And that means essentially that if you are having a conversation that a waiter overhears and dislikes, because there's no gauge as to what the test is for harassment. That person, if they could sue their employer over this, so then it puts this huge burden upon an employer to actually monitor the speech, for example, of people in the pub or in a cafe or in any place where members of the public assemble. I mean, look, if you and I have a heated argument, and it involves, say, Islam, that's not direct harassment about somebody who happens to be serving us food if they're Islamic. If I directly assault that person verbally, that's harassment, surely. And it's a very sinister way that they are increasing the definition of harassment here. So Toby Young, of course, a recent appointee to the House of Lords, head of the Free Speech Union, appointed to the House of Lords, I suspect, very much for this sort of role, is actually proposing amendments to the Employment Rights Bill to remove that requirement upon pub landlords and other employers to actually police, let's be clear here, to police our own free speech.
I mean, it's just remarkable that we're having this situation, a conversation about freedom of speech in pubs. That's what pubs are for. You go to have a drink and to chat and argue and all the rest of it. But I suppose the key thing here is that the government and the left in general are so keen on censorship, are so keen on clamping down on free speech, because I was just thinking about this earlier on. All of the stuff that they foisted upon us over this last decade has just been ridiculous fantasy, hasn't it? They live in a fantasy world. So, from diversity is our strength to global boiling to trans women are women, all of this stuff is just complete nonsense. So you have to police what people say, and if you police what people say, you can effectively police what people think. And if you don't allow them to have freedom of expression in public places, then that's the way you allow this fantasy world to take over. So it's great that Lord Young is pushing back on this, and we must all absolutely push back on this, because you don't give offence, you take offence. That's a really important distinction.
And remember, it's only one step away from our own, coming into our own houses, because pub is a public house.
It is.
Traditionally, people's homes were so small and cramped that they would socialise, the entire street would socialise in the public house. It was a place for free exchange of ideas. It was a place for political movements to start. It was a place for conspiracies. And, it's places that organisations like the FSU and the New Culture Forum, we use pubs to hold our meetings. Does that mean we wouldn't be able to hold these meetings if members of staff in these public houses decided that they disagree with our politics in some way? This is a huge attack on free speech, actually, which goes to the very heart of any modern democracy.
This whole thing, it makes me think about what it must be like for a young person who's thinking about entering the workplace for the first time. Because I know when I was kind of in my 18, 19, I didn't have any of these concerns. I wasn't even thinking about free speech. There was no DEI, not really. And all that was on my mind was like getting a good job and just being happy and finding what was out there. Whereas now you're going into the workplace almost already demoralised. Workplaces are becoming so sterile in terms of, we've already got the Equalities Act, which means everybody's worried about talking about all the protected characteristics and being accused of discrimination. Last year in October, there was a Workers' Protection Act that was brought in, which now means that all employers have to actively prevent sexual harassment in the workplace, even if it isn't an issue. So they've got to start talking to their employees about sexual harassment and tell them not to do it, even if they're not. And then potentially these amendments coming in, you just think, oh my gosh, the workplace has suddenly become... We've got so much worklessness in this country, and I don't think this is the reason why, but I do wonder if there is kind of the thought of work is becoming, it's just so sterile. It's so, people used to enjoy their work, whereas now there's something has changed about the workplace, I think.
I think it's more than sterile. Work now is a dangerous place for all of the reasons that you've said. So if you say the wrong thing, you're going to get in trouble. Wherever you, especially if you work in the public sector, the minute you walk through those doors, you are in a highly charged ideological environment. And if you don't fit into that, if you think slightly differently, then you have to keep quiet. You have to keep your head down. And again, I just keep coming back to this. It's a means of thought control. It's certainly a means of controlling what people say. It's about controlling people. And when you control people, you control ideas. That's what this is all this stuff is for. They're not interested in sexual harassment. My God, they're pushing the trans lobby, and it's statistically the trans lobby is far more likely to commit some kind of sexual crime than other people. That's just the way it is. Those are the stats. So they're not interested in the subject, what it's about. They're interested in what they can do and how they can control people.
I mean, it's very good that we've got Lord Young and we should say Claire Fox and a few others in the House of Lords that are pushing back. Rafe, why do you think this is even being brought in? Like, who is behind this? Is this label? I mean, where has it come from? What is the broader picture going on in terms of why there's such stringent acts on freedom of expression and free speech?
Well, it's the story of the last decade, isn't it? I mean, we've just seen this erosion along all lines. People on the left hate freedom, and you don't see these sorts of moves made by people on the right. Unfortunately, we've had no party of the right actually in government. So we've even had the Tory party sitting idly by, allowing these things to happen, allowing Quangos and others to essentially usurp the powers of Parliament and restrict our freedoms by it. I don't think anyone at this stage can be surprised now. That's the most sort of distressing thing. This legislation is shocking, but it's not surprising. This is what we've all come to expect. Interesting point that you made about the work you're making about the workplace and so forth. 30 years ago, the workplace was the number one place that people found their life partners.
Yeah.
And I saw something a few weeks ago actually showed how far that's fallen. And I wonder it's because people are too afraid to actually approach the opposite sex in the work environment. Pay a compliment even.
Well, particularly men, particularly with this sexual harassment law, because what constitutes harassment? If you ask someone out for a drink, and could it then become an allegation? So men are going into the workplace terrified. It means nobody can properly develop real friendships. Everybody's walking on eggshells. So it's terrible, really. And there was a recent example, just tangentially, that sort of a clip that went viral, Rafe, that you were showing me, of a police officer who was telling someone that saying you should speak English, telling somebody to speak English, or whether they can speak English, was itself a hate crime. And this is just an example of how far we've gone in terms of free speech issues in this country, where just asking a question could be seen as a hate crime. Is that right? Is that what happened?
Well, it's even worse than that, actually. What happened was there was a partially deaf person who I think was manning a stall on the street, and he had asked somebody to speak clearly, not even to speak English, just to speak clearly. And on the grounds of that, a complaint had been made. And again, you had one of these walking pride parade festivals came over, by which I mean the policeman, came over. And it was so comical, you would have thought it was a parody sketch. You would have thought it was one of those things put out by a comedian saying, actually, asking someone to speak clearly could be deemed to be a hate crime. And the person filming said, you do know this person is partially deaf. And even with that clear statement, the police made no impression at all. And what really was telling was that the person being accused of a hate crime, the partially deaf person, and everybody else around him, they burst out laughing when they heard this, because it is so ludicrous to suggest something like that. But you want do you laugh or do you cry, actually? Because it is getting to the point now where you can actually now be arrested seemingly for the most harmless of actions.
Philip, do you think it's that the police are just incompetent and they don't know what they're doing? Or is it tyrannical, or is it malevolent, or is it a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. I think they don't know what they're doing. Coppers should be out there gathering evidence, nicking criminals, and doing what coppers have traditionally done. They don't even bother with that half the time. If someone breaks into your house or someone steals your car or something like that, you can wait forever. Forget it. You'll get the insurance money. That's it. Forget it. They don't bother with shoplifters anymore, do they? So it's almost that they've given up on their actual purpose. And they're policing thought. It's almost as though the whole concept of policing has gone online, and they're thinking about they police tweets, but they also police behaviour that's ideological, don't they? They are presenting and imposing ideology on everyday behaviour, because I suppose that's what's happening in society, and they are just not equipped to do that. Okay, they just cannot do that. I've had dealings with where I've been a witness of a crime. I've had dealings with the police where they are dealing with these ideological issues, and they don't know what they're talking about. They really don't know what they're talking about. Now, that's not necessarily their fault. They're not, that's not what they're supposed to do. They're bobbies, they're police constables, and yet they're wading into gender ideology. They're wading into Middle Eastern kind of conflict and wars. And they have no idea. They're West Yorkshire Police.
I mean, and talking of West Yorkshire Police, there was a story about them being spending like £4 million teaching police officers about slavery. And this is part of their kind of anti-racist initiative, Philip. And if you are a member, you can stay with us for our extra content where we will be discussing that story in a little bit more detail. But otherwise, thank you, Philip. Thank you, Rafe. And see you next week.
Our mission at the New Culture Forum is and always has been to defend and celebrate Britain's history, culture and its people, and indeed Western civilization, at a time when both are under sustained attack. We have grown from small beginnings to become the country's most influential right-leaning cultural think tank. Our content is watched and read by some of Britain's most influential political figures. But now, we need your help. If you believe in what we do, then please do become a member. For as little as £4 a month, you can make a vital contribution to what we do. As a member of the NCF family, you will help ensure that we can continue to produce quality content online, such as our 3 weekly programmes, Whittle, which is our flagship interview show, Newspeak, our panel discussion show, and Deprogrammed, which is targeted at Britain's youth. As you probably know, in addition, we produce important documentaries, such as our critically acclaimed 6-part series, The West, a stunning celebration of the history and genius of Western civilization, and our ongoing documentary series, Heresies, with hard-hitting episodes tackling subjects such as immigration, gender ideology, and BBC bias. But the New Culture Forum is much more than a YouTube channel. We don't just complain about Britain as it is, we provide real solutions and clear policies on how we can push back against the madness and restore sanity to this nation. Our presenters are now highly sought after and have become familiar faces across the media. Our prestigious annual Smith Lecture and our regional and indeed national conferences have attracted world-class speakers. Perhaps most importantly, we are the only organisation on the right of politics that has launched a national movement without actually being a political party. And uniquely, through our NCF Locals programme, we've established some 30 active branches in towns and cities right across the nation, from Edinburgh to Exeter, and with many more on the way. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and our members have made it possible. In return, our members receive access to exclusive content, invitations to private events, free or discounted tickets to our conferences and lectures, free copies of our books, and much more. I very much hope that you'll join us too by clicking the link in the description or going to our website, newcultureforum.org.uk. Now is the time that we need your help. Thank you.